How about now? How about now? Can you hear me now? Dang it. I've had nothing but technical difficulties. Still no sound. Okay. How about now? Testing, testing. Jingle that handle. Thank you. I've had such a morning of technical difficulties. It's crazy. It's just been crazy. And it starts with Chief, but that's not all entirely their fault. I've been trying to do a bunch of different things. And I'll show you why. And we'll just show you what's going on the screen. And I got to hide that current comment. So with X17, we have two different modes. And what does that mean? One, it's challenging for someone like me that wants to stream for you guys and explain how to use things in Chief Architect when I have to have two different machines set up entirely differently for X17. So that's happening now. We've got something called managed mode, and that's a lead in to maybe introducing Chief Architect Cloud in the future. And then we have an unmanaged mode. So it's really challenging to show you guys both of those modes, and I was trying to flip-flop back and forth between the two. It caused me some problems. I had to uninstall Chief, and then I got stuck into a loop of trying to install it, and it's been difficult. But I've finally got it up. And I figured I might as well show you the install process as well as the new features, because that's going to be important to some people. So I'll try to keep up with the comments. I'll be kind of pausing and taking a look at comments. I'm on the stream by myself, so no one's helping me out. Anyways, what we have here is just what we get when we're first installing this. And right off the bat, we're getting some dialog boxes that you've probably never seen before. And that's because it's introducing resource management, which is part of project management. And so instead of going into preferences in Chief Architect X16 and previously to set up what our new plan is, it's going to ask us right off the bat, what do we want in terms of for using templates? So our template plan, our template layout plan. And so this is what's called managed mode. And so I had to come in here and import new, and I needed to go target my template plan file for it to load in. Now I did that. That part's done. So load custom template. You can see here it's loading my own custom template, or you can load that default installed residential template, and I get to press OK. Now it's going to ask me loading custom template for the layout file. So I get to select, and then it's got a listing of template files here. And then instead, I'm going to click on import new, and I'm going to import my own template from X16. So it's essentially going to migrate that. And then I get to choose that as my default template. And let me press OK. Now, in my case, I might not want a bunch of these other templates in there as options. And I'll show you what we can do in managed mode to kind of manage that, right? And so here we go. And I'm going to have to keep zooming, I know. Let me know if you guys want me to go backtrack and pause and go zoom in on something so you can see. But it starts right off the bat. It says, we want to make a new project from your template because we're opening up the software and we're assuming you're going to start working on something. Now, if you're someone like me where you like to test some things and you're going to work through some template changes and you want to kind of mess around, or you want to just have a project where you can, kind of play, you can set up a test project. And so what is a project? A project is going to be a heading that then has resources, and those resources are going to be your plan and layout file. And you'll just see what this looks like in a second. But you see here, it says project name. You get to name that whatever you'd like. And then you can name your plan and layout separately from that project name. So in my case, I have something that looks for this -n in my template. So I'm going to put that -n in there. And then this, I actually don't need this to be tested, and this could be fool around or whatever, but let me just press OK. So it's going to use that template. This is your opportunity to choose any templates that you want on the fly, which is very cool. And let me press OK. So once I press OK, it'll open up my template file. For some reason, it thinks that my layout is locked. I think this maybe has something to do with cloud. I'm not sure. I've had this come up a few times. Keep in mind, we're in public beta, so you might run into a couple little problems as you go. And then I'm just going to say cancel. And it does, in fact, show that I have this test project over here in the new project browser. And just to make this really clear, managed mode is very different from unmanaged mode. And what we're looking at is managed mode. So you're going to see here on the sidebar here, we've got a folders panel. In fact, we've got a bunch of new things here that don't look all that familiar. We've got a preview folder. We've got a bunch of icons down here that probably don't look familiar. And so I just want to show you in preferences, under preferences, we're going to see here that under project, we've got a project management section in preferences, and it says check uncheck use chief architect project management, and it includes some kind of automatic backup of these resources. Okay, we're not going to get into that just yet. I'm just noting that this is indicating that we're in a project managed mode. So, and let me just take a look at one of these. Let's see. Does the project create a folder on your hard drive? It does, but it's not any folder that you can do anything with. Not in the sense that we can go locate this on our hard drive and do something significant with it. We have to do everything within Chief Architect in managed mode. Now, I know for some of us that really like control of our source files and like to manipulate source files, that's an immediate no-no, and you're not going to work in managed mode. But stick around, because there's some things that maybe the goods outweigh the bads for you. Who knows? You're going to have to make that decision yourself. So in managed mode, there's some really, really cool things about this. The main reason I think and from conversations I've had, the Chief Architect has brought in managed mode is that we've got a lot of multi-seat users or multi-machine users that when they were sharing files across another user or to another machine, that they were missing things, right? They're missing links to PDFs. They're missing links to material files. They're renaming their plan file or their layout file, and it's breaking links to those. And so in managed mode, when we go to export a project, okay, when we export a project, it exports all those resources with it so that the end user on the other end then gets those resources, and they're no longer going to have missing files. It does end up, I believe, importing the data, those resources, into their own chief data on their side as well. I have not done enough testing in this to tell you exactly how it works, like I typically would have a good bearing on exactly how it works, but that's how I think that it works, is that when we export a project, it brings resources with it, and then it imports it onto the other side of things where it's, you know, another machine or, well, another user's machine, right? So something that's really fantastic and then just is going to blow your mind right out of this world right away is something I've been requesting for a very long time, which is, if you're using my Pro Plan templates, you know that I have 5 billion CAD details. And what's fantastic about this new X17 is I get to just right click here and new folder. That's right. We get subfolders. This is awesome. I just get to say, hey, I want to put details, and then I'm going to locate all the details I include here, and just, we get a lot of drag and drop options that work similar to the library. We can just drag and drop. And in fact, you even get subfolders within subfolders. Yes, we get a top level folder and then subfolders. And that's a really cool way to organize your project. So if you're someone that has a lot of details like I do, you no longer have to add these prefixes in here to kind of organize things, because we get these subfolders, right? So that's just great. And I do believe that we might get a cut paste action as well. I haven't tried that out. Yes, we do. So we can cut paste as well. So that might be easy. So I can just do a new folder, say this is keynotes, where all my keynote schedules are. I can find my keynotes, cut, and then go ahead and paste CAD details. There we go. Very cool. Not only that, but you can paste it across projects, right? So I can paste this into, a template plan if I open these template plans. Now, something that's kind of interesting about this is that notice that we have plan and layout templates in common documents. And something that's really clever about this is notice I've got this California spec document here. I'm actually going to right click in common documents and I'm going to import some files. And the files I'm going to import are some other spec files that I have. And so I'm going to get into templates and I've got some, let's see if I can remember where I keep this. Yes, I can. National Canada, National US spec. Let me open these up. So what does this mean? Well, here's that California spec, national Canada spec. These are now in common documents. And so what that means is if I go to open up my test layout project file, which did not open the correct layout at all. I think that was that missing file problem. Let's just go ahead and let's see if I can add a new layout. There we go. Look at this. We can right click, add a new layout. I'm looking for my default. For some reason, it's saying that it's locked, so I can't seem to use that particular template file. And we'll just work through some problem solving here real quick. I'm just going to make a copy of my template file. So we'll see if we can't do it that way. So import file, and we got a copy. And look at this. It pops up and says, these additional files are found in the same folder. Do you want to include them as part of the import? In this case, I don't. So I'm just going to say continue. So clear all. Actually, they're not selected, and we'll just hit continue. And there we go. I should be able to open this up now. So what's very cool about this is I think I just get to change my resources for this. So same way we typically would, which is tools, layout, reference plan, layouts. And so California spec is listed here, and this is driving all the spec standards on my main sheet of my template here. So I get to replace this reference, and I can just easily go and find in common documents that I have Canada spec or the IRC spec. So I change it to Canada spec, press OK, and it just changed all my spec very easily and my design loads to something that's referencing, Canada spec. So very cool to just have this in common documents. So now these are really easily accessible. Not only that, but you can just open these up in CAD details, etc., and you can just click and drag, and this will drop that CAD detail right into this view just like that. So it's just a drag and drop feature that we've got now, which is very, very cool. Let's see what comments we have now. How is that different than backing up everything to zip archive like we can do now? You can back it up to zip archive like you do now. It's just that it's managing it on their end, and it's taking away some need for some knowledge that you might already have, Cody. Cody's comments pinned up on the screen. You might have experience. We're going to have mic issues. Can you guys still hear me? I'm running into all kinds of mic issues. I've got a touchy little cable right now. Test. Seems like it's working. Okay, cool. So in terms of what Cody was asking about, how is this different from our current workflow? It's not entirely different in its, in what it's solving for. This is kind of a gateway process to introducing Chief's integrated cloud. And so that's why this system is being developed. The other really nice thing about this is it makes it easy to manage your projects. And I'll show you why. For one, I can do a new folder and I can say, hey, this is my client, Rabbit Design. And then I can also say, hey, let's do a new folder where we've got Cody Starr. And so then from there, I can come in, kind of reduce my layout templates, etc. And I can take that test project and I can, well, one, I can make a copy of it. Okay. And then two, I can bring one of these into Rabbit Design. I can bring one of these into Cody Star. And then if I wanted to, I could change the color of this to whatever I wanted and know that when I'm coming into my project management that I get to just click on Cody Star and it's only going to have the projects that are for Cody Star, or click on Rabbit Design, it's only going to have the projects for that. On top of that, I think we even get to pin a particular project to the top. So if you're someone that has a client that has 40 active projects for that client, and you've got one that you're working on consistently, you can pin that to the top of project management. And the other things that we can do here is we can only show the open projects, which is just stuff that's open on your screen. We can hide the display of our default documents if we're not someone that needs to access that very often, right? This would be a new project right from here. And then on top of that, I believe we have, well, I guess they're calling folders tags. I know that we had the ability to make filters and stuff for tags. So this search ends up working a lot like the library search. And not only that, but we have a couple of new windows, and one of those is the details window. So if I open up the details window and click on a project test, it's even going to tell me, you know, when was this modified, when was it created, the size of it, etc., what folder it's in. And so we can sort by things such as date created, size, ascending, descending as well. So that's all pretty cool. Anthony Reed said, I cannot get your tools to load using managed mode. Yeah, same kind of problems running into going from an unmanaged mode to a managed mode and getting things to load properly is challenging. And I know that I've gotten it to work before. I just did a fresh install of this. So I need to do a reset migration to see if it will migrate from X16 to see if I can get my toolbars loaded on here, because that would be something that I'm interested in. I want to show features before I get too far into that, because I think at some point I will show, you know, migration, and just to show, you know, an end user what they can do if they're running into that same scenario, Anthony. Sort of a simplified product data management system. Does it provide for file locking between users and ensure all changes get incorporated? No. So currently there is no cloud integration on this system side. So what you would do is, if you've got a project you want to share with someone, you could, you're not going to be able to export from the top folder level, but you can export from the project level. And so when we export, this gives us the option to include any resources that might be in this file, including any kind of PDFs or something like that. And another aspect of this that I haven't touched yet, and I'm not sure that I know right off the bat where it is, I do, is tools asset management. And so asset management only exists in a managed mode, which might be another reason you want to use this. I'll give you a use case where you don't want to use this. But first, let me explain what this is. What this is doing is it's showing us all of our assets across all plans that are open in not only open, but exist in X17. And what it's going to do is it's going to try to attempt to merge all identical. Okay. And you can see here, we've got some identical textures here. And they don't even need to be necessarily named the same. Chief Architect is actually looking at the pixels of your individual image files and then potentially merging all identical. So this is a way to do asset management in a way where if we're creating a lot of duplicate textures by accident, this is leading to file bloat and other things. This is a new way of managing those assets and also sharing those assets so that when we export a project, it's going to pull these assets with it. Okay. And so if I just go to merge all identical, well, it's going to says it's going to take some time. Let's just let it roll, see what happens. Maybe we freeze the system. That actually seemed like it went really, really quickly. So yeah, there's some things that are even named the same, but because Chief Architect recognizes that there's a difference in the pixels, right, that it didn't merge some of these items. So, but it did merge a lot of these items. And so this is a way that we can import new assets and kind of replace assets as we need to. What does that even mean? Well, let's get into that working plan and let's pull a little 3D view after we draw some walls. And so let's say I wanted to change something about this material and I wanted to load that in. Well, now the texture panel looks very different than it used to be. This used to have just an input here. Instead, it's got a select button. Now, when I hit select, this immediately brings me to asset management where we want to import new. If that asset is in asset management already. If it's not, you could just click on import new and bring in a new asset. Now, another aspect of this is if you kind of target, there is a down arrow where you can go to select instead of import. All right. The other option here is holding shift, and notice what shift does on the screen. When I hold shift, it's going to change to import. Okay. So if I click on that, now it's bringing me to, you guessed it, I can search and find something on my own file folder structure. Give you an example of how cool this is, and this is going to tie into some new feature that we have, which is, let me just change this material at the top of the screen here, and I'm going to just shift import, and we'll import base diffuse texture, shift import, and I'm going to import this normal map. Now what's happening here is this is automatically importing this into asset management, because if I go and hit select, we should notice that somewhere in here, if I search for grid, look at that. It's actually automatically bringing this into asset management, which is automatically bringing this into our chief data. And this is how it's working to be able to share these projects with other people and still have that compressed and being added in. So kind of a new feature, a pretty cool one at that, is that we now have an emissive map. And so I'm just going to show this real quick because I'm making this texture on the fly. Is that, let me just, in this case, not select, I want to import. So I want to import a new emissive map. That's going to be this guy right here. And I'm going to turn that emissivity up to, let's just say, a fluorescent lamp. And look at our preview. Isn't that wild? We're just choosing a part of the texture that's creating light. And so press OK. And I bet you guessed it, I'm creating a big T-bar grid. Now, of course, I need to change the formatting for the size of this. These are 24 inches. So we've got 5 times 24 on the X scale. And we could still do our math right inside of the window here. And I've got and we've got 5 times 48 on the other scale things. And let's check that out. Look at this. And so if we switch to some kind of ray trace view, this should look like, that's just a texture. Isn't that wild? Looks like a T-bar ceiling grid with light in it. Pretty dang cool, Chief Architect. That one's pretty fascinating. Let's see. Is my mic audio still patchy, someone's saying? It might be that it's cutting off because I got it too loud, so I can back it off for myself. So asset management is only available in managed mode only. So if you're like me, I manage all my assets outside of Chief Architect. There's a setting in Chief Architect right now, even in X17, in case you didn't know it, in Preferences, underneath File Management, under Auto Copy Files. This is in previous versions as well, down to like X14, which is Copy Externally Referenced Material Files to my data folder. Now, this was introduced, I think in X14 or so, and by default, this is checked, which means that when you import something like an object that has materials, or you're creating materials, what Chief is doing is it's copying all those externally referenced files that make up that material, like those T-bar grid files, and it's bringing that into the Chief data folder under the textures folder directory. So I have mine unchecked because I have all my files really well organized outside of Chief. I am a very individual use case, and most people do not need to do that. The nice part about this is if I, in Chief Architect X16, go and update this source diffuse map, this base color map, what looks like a T-bar grid. If I update that in my source files, it automatically updates the material in Chief Architect X16 for me. In managed mode, that's not the same. If I update the source file, then I need to get into Tools Asset Management and import a new source file and replace that old source file. Now, can we do anything with these source files? Yes, we can. So I can, if I wanted to, I could go search for that grid source file, find it, and then in our menus over here, I could replace with. This is just a lot of extra steps for me. So it's one of the things that I'm going to kind of battle with in terms of efficiency versus, me liking the way managed mode works in a lot of different ways. Okay, now let's get back into managed mode, and we're going to kind of stay on this for a minute. Obviously, we're seeing the folder level things. These work just like tags, that if you hover over our folder that's being selected, these are essentially the same exact thing as tags in the library. We just get to hover over this, click the X, and now we see all of our common documents and everything else here as well. So something that you can bring in here if you want to be sharing files within this workflow is that we can take tests. I can say, well, hey, let me import a file, and the file type that I'm importing doesn't necessarily need to be a plan file. Now, keep in mind, it's not something that we can manipulate with Chief Architect, and we can't necessarily even read from this in Chief Architect. But when you go export this file, it's going to include that CSV file. So maybe that's a convenient way of sharing with a colleague when we have something that's not saved in plan, but they need that file as well. Okay. And you can still right click and open or open with, and it's going to bring up your default program for opening that file. So in this case, this is a CSV file. And so we're opening it up in Excel. So that's a pretty cool way of sharing this file with someone else. Again, this is leading to the eventuality that we might get a cloud in Chief Architect that's integrated with, a certain amount of storage that's available for that. And so this is a way to kind of do an all-encompassing share of that project via the cloud. But for now, you can export this and share it via the cloud as well, and it would include that CSV file if you chose to. Now, keep in mind, we could just export, and these files can be internal. So some of these files can be internal, where we get the uncheck client info CSV and export that and then import it on the other side. Freaking wild. Yeah, Scott Weiss says, freaking wild. Exactly. So back into just kind of managing our template files and everything else. You can open your template file right from here. It will warn you that you're opening a template file. I think that's a pretty cool thing. You can obviously remove a bunch of these template files if you don't want to see them. Here's there's a little dot next to what your default template file is. You can, of course, right click on something and you can say use as default. That's kind of a nice, fast way of doing things. It's really easy to start a new plan from one of these template files. So that's a pretty cool thing too. Your control new is going to do something similar. New project, make a copy of an existing project, and then open our recent documents still works. Save entire project. So we've got some new options here. So if I said new project, there's that option again to choose some other template file to start with that new project. So that's a really cool way of doing, maybe you have a template file for one jurisdiction versus another. So it's a really cool way of doing that kind of workflow. Next part about this is, I can just open this in place. Again, it's going to warn me, hey, this is a template file. Are you sure you want to open it and test this out? And in this case, I do. And then that gives me the ability to see the full project management workflow here, where I can edit CAD details, etc., and put them in those subfolders, which I'm going to be doing. Now, another aspect of subfolders that's going to be really, really impactful for many of you is that, hey, in cameras, if you have saved cameras, these are our default cameras indicated by that Chief Architect, their icon right on top of the file folder. But guess what? You can do new folders and cameras as well. So you can say, hey, we've got all the kitchen cameras here. All right. And so something that's kind of cool is I could just take this Redline camera, drag and drop it into kitchen cameras, and that's it. And I mean, that's just fast and easy. So we can organize, based on these folders. And then if you wanted to have this go back into its default directory, you can't just drag and drop over the top of that first floor anymore. That's not going to work. You have to drag and drop this back onto the main top level folder, and then it will put it back in its place. Okay. But of course, you can just copy paste this into kitchen cameras or just drag and drop. So same kind of thing with cross-section views, right? Where I've got some internal cross sections here. I'm going to have these be all my kitchen elevations, right? And then we can group select these and then just drag and drop. And that's just as easy as that versus my new folder for exterior elevations. And then just click and select and drag and drop. Now, I want to tell you something. I've got very few hours in this software. I did very little beta testing. I think I was trying to say that at the beginning when my mic was muted. And that's part of that is just the work I've had to do this year just didn't lend itself to being able to test this thoroughly. And another part of that was I was running into some problems with some of my systems in early betas, and it was just causing me to, not use it. And not having enough free time. So I'm kind of discovering this as I go, but there's a lot of really intuitive aspects to this new system that work really well. And I particularly love just being able to limit and target and tag. And it's not that I don't think you could have multiple tags for a particular project. So there's that aspect of it. I don't think I can just drag this into, the Kodi Star and have it be in both. You can't do that. So you have to make a copy. And so then we've got some redundancy there. That's an issue. But for the most part, I think this whole system works really well. So let's get on to, I've got a PDF here and it's a bunch of other new items on the list. Let me see if you've got any comments. Yeah, bitmap on a cabinet. The emissivity maps are pretty wild. And I do already have like an idea of, thinking and what I might want to do. I mean, something to just kind of keep in mind is even in this, if we were to go edit this floor material, it's going to use the default room. Well, I just essentially edited the default room. So look at what's in the default room is we've got light up on the ceiling. So you could do something like this where we're changing the default room's drywall and put in an emissivity map. General materials where that's going to show up, select, and I'm going to go, or actually let me tab in here. So general material, import, and I'm going to go find something in my materials catalog that's just an alpha mask. Alpha mask would just be a black and white mask. So got a bunch of alphas here, and look at this. We'll just do this. We'll crank the emissivity up, and this is going to make a grid. And so then the next time we go and try to change this floor material, look at our preview. That's pretty ridiculous, right? That's pretty funny. Let's take that back a few levels. I don't think we need that happening. Okay. What new features, Scott Wise says, what new features are the most exciting to see integrated, Renee Rabbit, and which suggestions that you provided made it in? So I would like to I think I'm going to roll through the list, and we've got 3 pages. So this is going to be a long show, and I might cut it off halfway, in the show and then set up another date for a part 2 or something like that. But just right away, the big moneymaker for me, the one that recoups the cost of this subscription just immediately for me, is something that's maybe trivial for other people that just don't have it set up the same way. But for me, we've got some new automatic wrapping of schedules. And let me just try to set this up real quick. So I'm just going to put a bunch of windows in here, and I'm going to set my schedule to not group similar items so that we see that we've got a bunch of different windows. And we'll throw some doors in there as well. And so let's just go find that schedule from object. Let's open this up. Yeah, my hotkeys did not migrate, so I definitely have to reset some migration stuff. And then let's just say in columns and rows that we're not going to group similar objects. And then you're going to see something pretty fascinating. Now, if I just press OK, we're going to see, a long schedule here. But instead, if I were to open this up again, I'm going to check this new section out, wrapping. I'm going to say we're going to do 3 entries per table. Table alignments left, that's fine. And then we're going to put in some offset. All right. And I'll show you what that offset means. I argued a little bit that offset should be called gutter, but I didn't win that argument. This is the offset, the space in between the schedule. But this schedule is now automatically wrapping at 3 rows exactly. Now, there's something to be said about just having to resize this a little bit. You're going to have to do that to conform this once you've got it. But I do believe once it's resized that it kind of maintains. And you might have to do individual rows and size them exactly how you need them to be. But this is a huge one for me. If I'm doing 50, 60, 70 projects a year or something like that, some large number, and I'm constantly having to cut and wrap this on the layout side, this saves me so much time. I imagine it saves me about $600 a year. So that's the big one for me. And, just to show you that one more time is we can open this up. And then in the wrapping section here, we could say 4 entries per. We could say that it's got 0 offset if you'd like. And we could say that it's a center alignment if you like. And then center alignment's going to show like that, right? Center aligned. And there's no gutter in between. They're just stacked right on top of each other. But that's a huge one for me. If I make a copy of a CAD detail in the new copy, can I just drag it back to the template? If I make a copy of the CAD detail, can I just drag it back to the template? So you do get let's see, if we open this up, and now we get the drop-down menu, and we've got the drop-down menu here, we've got CAD details, and we've got keynotes. Can I just copy, paste, and drag this? Or maybe, maybe we've got some standards. Can I just take this and drag it over here? And it looks like the answer is no. Yeah, answer is no there. But you can just cut and paste. So you can cut and paste into another project. That would be the answer for that. Well, my templates still work. Yes, if you are someone that has my templates, they do still work in X17. In fact, they have some features in unmanaged mode that are better than in managed mode. It's actually just one feature. I have a feature that it reads your designer and client information from an Excel sheet. And that still works in managed mode. It's just it takes a little bit more to set up. And the reason being is that in unmanaged mode, we can find where the root of that file exists on your machine. And so if we can find that, then we can find other files that located right next to it. In managed mode, we don't know where the root of that file is because it's stored internally. So we have to find some other means to target a folder where we might be keeping some of the resource files. And we don't have any way of linking to some non-chief architect asset that's in project management. And so we can't read from a CSV that's in project management. So we have to go about that in some other way. That's a little bit more advanced. We're going to keep on track. I'm just looking at a couple of comments here. Yeah, disco floor. I'm with it if you need it. Can we change the color of emissivity for each section in the map? No, this is just going to be a black and white map to indicate which part is emissive and what part is not. But because this is still a texture map, I think technically, does it supply color from that? No, I don't think so. I don't think you can do that independently. You might need a secondary map for that. All right, so let's go through. Let's take a look at this list real quick. What's new in Chief Architect X17? So we can sort options in the library. I don't think I need to show that. I think we might show that in, if you're unfamiliar with me, I also stream alongside of Dan Bowman, John Schrader, Kevin Transu, Robin Fisher, and we do that on Chief Experts Designer Show. And we are going to do a review of the X17 that's not going to go quite so crazy on the details like I will in this live show. So that might be something we take a look at there. Modeless cross-section slider dialog. That's actually a really big one. It might not seem like a big one to you immediately, but if we get into the 3D menu and we click on our camera view options cross-section slider, and I do a little cross-section slide cut, it used to be that you could not navigate in 3D once this window is open because it was not modeless. Modeless means that we can still operate without this window locking us into some particular mode where we are creating some settings. So on the fly, I can kind of change and look around and see that my cross-section cut is, in the proper area. So that's a really cool one. I like that one. Consolidated import of plan settings. I'm not going to go through that process, but I will tell you that it's now just, it's a little bit easier to import plan settings. The thing that it does not have still, in case I know some of you are going to be immediately asking this question, is it's still not going to import floor defaults where we're picking up structure and we're picking up from structure to structure, those designations. So your floor and room default heights, right? It's not going to pick that up, but we've got, file import, and we can import a project, we can import 3D symbol, etc. But we've got some new import here, which I think you have to be in a 2D view for. Yes, and so we can import what? Import picture. I'm not sure where this is. There is a way to import from another project. Backup and restore. Maybe restore. I think it's just import project, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a project file. Huh, I don't know. I'll have to dig into that. I don't quite know how that works. Angle snap control is going to be a really, really big one for some of you that just aren't designing on our typical angles. So we can set angle snaps to 90 or 45 degree increments and use the angle grid controls in the general plan defaults to customize a list of additional angles for snapping. So if we just double click on our select objects tool, that's going to bring up a whole new set of dialogues here that we haven't seen before. And so angle grid is where we can choose additional angles. So if you're someone that doesn't even want it to snap on 15 degree increments, and actually that's kind of me, I don't want it to snap on 15 degree increments. Maybe you only want it on 45 degree increments. So what happens when we press OK and say yes, and I want some cabinet here, and I want to kind of drag this over. Look at this. I'm not getting all that 15 degree snapping where it's picking up something at every 15 degrees along the way. It makes it a lot easier to move things polar orthogonally, right? This is just my right click move. Left click move is going to have that same setup, except for we're going to ignore that 45 degree entirely. So right click move, and now I've bound it to only 45 degrees. So for an individual project where, hey, we're drawing boxes, that's going to be something that you're probably going to want to do. That's going to make a big difference in terms of just moving and ignoring snaps along the way without having to do modifier keys like the S key or something like that. So that's a really big one. I really like that. And then aside from that, we can add that we've got incremental snap grid units on top of that. So, hey, maybe we only want to do 9 degrees, but we want to add something that happens to be on like a 3 degree opposing angle or something like that, right? So that's going to do something entirely different. Let's see. I'm not sure exactly how that works. Yeah, not sure. I have to play around with that. Continuous draw, same wall type. Continuous draw, same wall type. This one's so big for me. It's so big for me, especially when you're doing as-builts. So often we need to, maybe we've got some wall here, right? That's carrying through here, and I know that I've got a hallway here, but I also know that I've got walls on both sides of that hallway that continue through, right? And so I want to just continue drawing seamlessly. So I'm going to break this right here, and it would be great if I can just not only draw one segment, but draw multiple segments. So what do we get to do now? We get to right click this continue, and guess what? It will continue to draw our walls until we either left and right click together or finally close this shape. So that's just so big to me. This saves me so much time. I can't tell you. So it's just really easy to just reference a wall on the other side of a building that you know is lined up, but then still use that continuous draw without having to pick the tool again, try to locate, this intersection, as opposed to just taking that edit handle and drawing out from there. There's that 3-degree increment that I added to this plan. Oops. And so that same action is available, I believe, in the polyline as well. So that if we, let's just add a little break here to right here, and maybe not. That doesn't look like it. What does it say here? Continuous draw, same wall type, use the same wall type, edit handles. Okay, so it's just wall types, got ya. And then we get to 3D editing of multi polylines. Now, I want to say something. We're in beta right now, and so I need to kind of try to avoid any kind of errors or problems that I've run into. We're trying to pump up people's excitement for this software. They're still going to be fixing some things before our final release. And so this 3D editing molding polylines, it's really, really good, but I have run into a couple little problems in there, and I know the team's working on it. So what does that mean, 3D editing of molding polylines? Let's get into this view. Boy, I miss my toolbars. I'm like a lost puppy without them. It's funny. Oh, I don't even have a user catalog. Ha! I'm gonna have to migrate all that stuff. Let's see if they've got a round molding here. So I'll type in round, and then I'm going to type in molding and scroll down to type moldings. And maybe we found a round profile. And if we get into the build menu and under trim, we do a molding line. Should be able to just draw a molding line. Now there's going to be a couple things you notice here. Quite a few things you might notice here. One is we're getting some relative heights here, even with our cross-section slider on, which is really, really cool. So what does that mean? I can actually click on this and I can say, hey, let me just scoot to the end here. And let's go -6. What's that going to do? It just lifted that molding up 6 inches off the floor. Look at this, 6 inches off the floor. Let's call it 15 inches off the floor. Why not? How cool is that? The other one is, we got an endpoint here. If I click on the endpoint, you're going to notice a little gizmo. What does that mean? That means I get to drag that endpoint in any plane if I want to, just because I clicked on the end. Now, instead, if I just selected and use the continuation, notice that there's some kind of plane indicator indicating that I am drawing in a vertical plane. Now, I don't know if I click on the very top of this that this changes. Right, so it's in a vertical plane. If we wanted to change this to a horizontal plane, we're still going to have to use this tool right here, select edit plane. And we can either choose a vertical edit or a horizontal edit. And that way, when I click on this, it's going to drag it this way. Okay, so I get to just drag this around. Now, tab and enter work here. So we can hit tab and say, I want a new 60-inch segment length. And notice that it's also showing us our in-between dimensions here. So I can say that I want 60 inches in between this section as well. So this is some really high-level cool stuff, all right? Now here's where I can get into a little bit of glitching. It depends on the extrusion profile that you're using. Chief Architect is trying to automatically miter for you your molding profile so that if you do something kind of obscure, like take this circle, for instance, where this is essentially twisting at this miter, and now I want to move this top piece up a ways. It's going to try to miter this, but it's got a twist. It's a round profile. It's not quite fixing yet. So this is something that I think is going to fix in the next issuance of this, right? But Again, I'm in a horizontal plane. It's kind of giving me an indicator of that when I drag this around, and I can of course change that to that vertical plane, draw this up and draw it up some specific amount if I want, and then click on this endpoint and draw this out some specific amount. So very, very cool for doing this kind of stuff. It's just that when you create a twist is when the problem occurs, where it's trying to automatically miter that twist. Super cool. Okay, custom toolbar configuration graphic. So if you're adding some kind of custom toolbar configuration, customized toolbars in those configurations, we now have a choose icon button in case you want to change the icon for this extended tools configuration. For instance, you could change this to something else. So that's kind of cool if you just want your icons to look a certain way. I certainly do. You know, all my toolkits have very custom icons that I draw. That non-model cross-section improvement is fire. Yes, modal. I don't know why I'm calling it model. Customize the status bar display. This is just going to be on our preferences now. So edit preferences, and in our appearance panel, we now have a whole status bar section. If there's some things that you don't want to see here, this is where you can uncheck those. We can now import multiple DWG DXF files at one time. Very cool. By the way, I'm going to kind of pick and choose, but if one of you wants to join me on this stream, you are welcome to. Let me know in the comments section. All right. This is a big one. You designers out there, listen up. This one's one you're going to want to pay attention to. We now have Material Builder, okay? Material Builder is Dustin Cruz over at Chief Architect's been working on this, I want to say like 4 or 5 years or something like that. He uses a program called Substance Designer. It's a node-based program where he can generate an end file where you can configure things of his parameters to create some material. And so he's built a tile builder. He's built a wood builder. He's built some kind of upholstery textile builder. And now it's loaded into the software, preloaded into the software. And it doesn't just stop there, but let's just show you what this means. In the 3D menu, we have the material builder, okay? So we're going to click this up. This also is a modeless window, so I can still navigate in Chief Architect all I want to and have this window open. Now, when we go to select a builder, this is preloaded with 3 of Dustin Cruz's builders. And then there's one more item here, select external substance SBSAR file. Now, I do want to note that that's a really cool feature. This means that we can use some other builders that you might find out on the internet. We're going to get to that in a minute. First, I'm going to start with the tile builder. Now, the tile builder gives us the ability to manipulate this the same way that we did in Substance Player before. If you're privy to this, this was in Chief Architect's Chief Talk forums in the symbols and content section of that forums. And then the very first pinned item was the Substance Player builder. And then it had a big explanation of how to use this. But what this means is we can sit here and create different tile types just by expanding these menus and changing some parameter to say, make a green grout really ugly tile for subway tile very quickly, and then add it to the library and go ahead and build anything we want. And so this also specifies multi-color tiles in his configuration. So we can do a 2-color checker random where the second color is hot pink quartz, which would be a real interesting choice, right? And then I just get to add this to my library, spray it onto my project. Really neat for making tile materials on the fly, right? And you can just keep this window up, kind of edit as you go. You can test it by spraying it onto the wall and then make your changes, etc. That's awesome. I mean, truly, you're going to get a lot of tile materials done this way. The other aspect of this is you can go on to the World Wide Web and you can find other assets for this. And I want to note that on my resources page on my website, I will be building a specific Google Index Advanced Search Filter specifically for these types of files so that you can find them on the greater web easily. But that's not going to be for another couple months. In the meantime, let me just say done. I'm going to close this modal window. I want you to notice that in Edit Preferences, and I just found this last night, underneath our folders, if we show all path, there was something that I thought was very interesting here, which is that there's a substance folder here. And so if we find that, my mic is so touchy, I have to keep testing it because if I bump it, it turns off. All right, looks like we're back on. Okay. Notice that there's a substance folder here, right there. Okay. And if I say show in Explorer, that's going to bring this up in my Explorer window. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is that I happen to have a lot of substance files. I've already had this. I've had this suite for a very long time, and I have them organized, and they're right here. And so just as an example, I'm going to click on my fabric and textiles, and let me just grab a few of these, and I'm going to copy them into the substance folder that Chief has here. Okay, and so there we go. Copied a bunch of those into the Chief folder. Let me come back to Chief. Let me hit done. Let me get back into the 3D menu. Now, I would think that in the material builder, I would need to go reload Chief Architect or something, right? But if we choose this dropdown, look at that. Immediately, we've got all these different builders where I can build materials from Substance Designer files, SBSAR files, so that I can click one of these and it'll load up some material builder that is built similarly to what Dustin Cruz has built. And so this is a way that I can make quite literally thousands of materials very, very quickly right inside of Chief Architect and add it to the library. This is a time where I want to kind of come a little bit off topic, which is how do we kind of, if we do find a billion different texture files like this, how do we kind of preview these without having to click one by one to understand what these are even building? And this is something where I don't have an affiliate link for this company. I'm just promoting them because I think it's a fantastic company. There's a company out there called Design Connected, and they make a software that's supposed to kind of pull and add resources so that you can preview all of your external 3D model files, external just image files, external material-based files, including builder files like this. And so I'm going to open this up just to show you. Just to show you that you can add all these substance files if you can find them online. Maybe you pay for some of them. Maybe you get a bunch of free ones. You know, they're coming from Adobe owns Substance, right? So you've got an Adobe stock subscription. You might get access to Substance. If you have the Substance suite, you might get access to this. So Connector can preview all these files. Not only can it preview these files, it integrates with a builder so that you can spec inside of Connector if you want to test some settings first. So what this is doing is looking at, in this case, I have it loaded up my materials files that are all substance player files, and I'm just looking at the folder for plaster substances. And so it takes a while to load, especially because these are large files in some cases. But I get to just click on one of these substance previews here, and in my right side window, it will show me all the parameters for that, as well as some of these substance files come preloaded with a couple of different configurations so that you can see the capability of the tool. But very quickly here, I might be able to create some kind of carved plaster wall, and here's all the settings that are provided in the substance player file. And so this is exactly what's going to be loaded into Chief Architect. You're going to have access to all these same settings. So this is just a way that I can preview these materials if I have a large library of them, okay? Let's get back to this. I think we're going to move on from that one. Let's see what we've got in terms of comments here. What's my favorite material builder? Oh, favorite material builder. That's a really tough one. I have a lot of good ones. I have one where I just built a plaster material that just looks really fantastic, and it blends well with other materials, and it's really easy to kind of set up and and mess around with. I think it's called peeled plaster. So, I mean, we can show you just how quick it is to integrate something like that. Is I'm going to come back into here. I've got plaster substances. I can do a little partial search where I say peel just by putting an asterisk around it. And then we're going to see here we've got peeled plaster walls, copy, paste it over here. And then let's get back to Chief, get into that 3D material builder, and should be able to find peeled plaster wall right here. Let's see if it loads up. It does. And so there we go. So I can set kind of my base textures up, etc. But let's just take a look at what this looks like. I'm just going to add it to the library real quick, and we'll just paint it into plan mode onto the wall. It looks like I lost my Modeless cross-section slider window, so let's turn that off so we can see this. And let's kick on a little ray trace view. And so the one thing about this is, obviously you're going to have to kind of adjust your material size. So maybe for this material size in the texture panel, maybe this goes up to like 80 inches. Yeah, but out of the box, I mean, that's a pretty good looking material. If I can get a window in here to see. Very cool. Off topic, do I use Chief for structural drawings? Yes, I absolutely do. I do not have my template loaded up at the moment, but let's just see if we can get it real fast, which is just get to open this up. And I'm going to get to my page, I think 14. And yeah, so I have pre-drawn details that are stacked, and they have the capability of adding features to them just by, I can copy, paste, hold, relink, and I can relink. If we just get this window expanded here, I can relink to some kind of upper, in this case, upper stackable detail like brick or CMU or something like that. So that adds a brick overlay if I improve the draw order. And so there you go. That just added brick to the front face of this particular detail. And so I can do the same thing, copy, paste, hold, position. Oops. Trying to do this with just the right click menu because my hotkeys aren't loaded up. And then relink this, and I can do, upper CMU wall. And then again, just change that draw order and bring it to the front. And so before you know it, I'm kind of creating a new detail out of what's already there. So it's really easy for me to draw cross sections this way. If I want some kind of furred wall or something like that, same thing, copy, paste, hold, position, relink it. And I have all these details drawn in the same coordinate grid, so that add on upper wall, some kind of furred wall. There we go. So now I have this brick CMU furred wall, lower foundation very quickly. So yeah, I draw structural details in here. All right, let's get to our next item. Interactive material editing. Boy, this is going to really make some people excited, especially for those of you that are trying to get really specific in terms of like designing showers. So let's just take a look at this. Let's get into a view, and let's go see if we can't pick up some kind of tile material from Chief. Or let's take this a little full circle action here. Let's load up that Chief Architect tile builder, and we'll just do that subway, and we'll make this a nice small grout, right? Something like that. And let's say that it's a 2-color, and this will kind of send the purpose of this home. 2-color random, how about that? And oops, add to library. And let's paint this on the wall. And we're going to show you how we can adjust some things. Okay, so we've got this wall on the wall, and in this case, let's just say that I want to change some of the offset of this material. And so we have a new tool. So in the 3D menu, and actually it looks like it's just defaulted on the toolbar, interactive material editor. And so when we do this, we do in fact get our painter modes, component, etc. And in this case, I want to make a copy of this material on one side because I'm going to change it separately from the left side. So this is generating a copy. And then from there, I get a little edit handle and I'm able to move this in the axis. Let me go ahead and change our rendering mode so that we're not sitting here waiting for that render. So again, I just get to move this. And so you can move this accurately if you want to, but let's just say that I want to finish with a complete tile in that color, right? So I'm just kind of arbitrarily placing it, but I'm using that same tool in this case in plan mode to adjust this other side, right? And so I actually want a white tile up next to that one color tile, and I'm going to make sure that that's a full tile as well. So this is pretty cool. Number of different things. You can scale this top to bottom this way. You can do it accurately by hitting tab or enter. This gives us the ability to scale this precisely. Okay. Same thing, scale this precisely. Let's just say that in our X scale, we wanted this to actually be 60 inches, right? Or you can scale X and Y together, and same thing, tab or enter, and now you're changing those X and Y scales specifically. So I can set these back down to 20 and 20 if I uncheck aspect ratio, right? That's going to take that back down to its regular. Or maybe you've got a little feature where you want to rotate this. So this is really, really handy for lining this stuff up. Now, there is no kind of pick point where we can pick part of the pattern and line it up precisely based on the pattern. This is going to kind of move arbitrarily based on the point that we're clicking on. So if I use that tool and then I click right here in that corner, notice that that edit handle is right in this corner. So this might be a case for getting in real tight. And if it's such that you have your cameras set up that it's clipping areas as you get in tight, you might want to do something about that. Let's just customize toolbars real quick and put our search tool on here. And let's go tool search. We'll just add this to the bar here. And something that you might want to do is just edit the active view, change our clip surfaces within to 0 inches when you're using this tool, maybe. And so that's not going to clip so tightly. And so you can maybe get in real close. And then kind of a legacy tool was perspective crop mode. And so you can turn on perspective crop mode, and that would make it so that it's maybe a little bit easier to get in here tight and kind of roll around and truly accurately pick some little tiny little point to move this. Now, I don't think that this tool works in a vector rendering mode. Let's just check that out real quick. So in a vector view, and and we're not seeing any patterns here, that tool is grayed out. Let's switch back to a standard view, and then in technique options, let's see if we do hand-drawn lines on top. Can we use that tool? We can. So we can at least see those hand-drawn lines on top. So if you wanted to just work from just the pattern itself, maybe you turn that pattern color to something kind of bright so that you can truly see it, but you're not quite snapping to that pattern. So that's not going to happen. All right. Oh, this is a big one for us rendering folk. Show windows as open. It's just a nice little bonus. It really is. I just get to click on this, right? And we just get that same icon, show open in 3D. Bam. And I think the same setup here as well is that we just got to open this file up, and in the dialog window under our options, do we have a percent open? No, it's under the general percent open. So we can set this to something higher than that value. And there we go. If I had my toolbars, I'd be able to quickly change this type so we could show all the different types. But there's single hung. Yeah, I mean, this is just going to look nice. Very nice to show a client, maybe how something operates. Maybe we got like a single hopper. Single hopper, look at that. Very cool. You can essentially make a few, I could think of a few use cases for using a window to kind of display as something else now that it's capable of doing this. single awning, etc. Like, I feel like you could do a, maybe you can fake, what's that one that's a casement and a hopper at the same time? Maybe you can kind of fake that, who knows? And can we set it in defaults for all windows? I believe so. Should be able to do this. So in window, general window, there's a percent open option, show and open in 3D or show open in 2D. Show open in 2D is kind of interesting. I could, I've seen a couple architectural drawings where they're showing that. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting. So if I switch this to test new and we're looking overhead at this, and we've got an awning, it's the same thing. Show closed in 3D. I don't see an option to show open in 2D. So I think you have to come here, show open in 3D. Show open in 2D is grayed out for this one. So that's, this is going to be window type. So single casement, it's probably not grayed out. Show open in 2D for single casement, and it's going to show that, which kind of looks like a door. So that sounds like a big liability problem to me. All right, cabinet box sides and thickness. We have the ability to set, so if we place a cabinet here, our box sides and thickness now, and this is in defaults as well. So I believe this is in box construction. Yeah, side thickness and back thickness. Please note that we do not have independent control of thickness of left side versus right side. So that's something that I hope we see in future releases. But for right now, we get side thickness, back thickness. So you can specify. We're getting really close to being able to produce a cut list. And so let's just take a look at this, back side, etc. And maybe if we go look into the Ruby console, we can see, where is the Ruby console? It's a good question. Tools, Ruby console. There we go. Let's take a look at this. I believe we should have some kind of box thickness in here. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing it. Box construction name. I do believe that there's some kind of box thickness in here where we can report that to schedule. So if you need to see that kind of information. I don't have my templates loaded up, so I don't have quite all the same tools. Okay, under counter appliances, I'm gonna kind of jog over this. I've had a lot of problems with this one, so we're not even gonna look at it yet. But the theory here is that we get to place an appliance without a cabinet. So we can just place a dishwasher right next to a cabinet box and have that cabinet box extend its countertop over that dishwasher. And there's just a couple of display issues that I was having with that. So we're not going to touch on that. We'll leave that for a later episode. I think they might come out with a kind of a flash patch for that. And then offsets for built-in appliances. So because we are now capable of putting a dishwasher right next to a cabinet, this was something that was very confusing for new users as they tried to place a dishwasher not inside of a cabinet, but just place it, and then having that Y offset, or it's 24 inches Y offset, where the 2D of the dishwasher looked like it was in the correct place, but the 3D actually had the dishwasher pushed through the wall, and that's because it was meant to install inside of a cabinet. So now instead of that, when we go and try to place a dishwasher, or any symbol for this matter, we have a bunch of new settings in the symbol side of this thing. So place this, let me open this. And then in the options side of things, a couple of things here. When we set inserts into countertop, now it has the ability to specify that offset. Inserts in the cabinet front, now we get to specify that offset right here. We also have the ability for some object to cut ceiling or floor or wall. And so we get to specify that offset here. And in this case, there's a new options category called appliances under counter. And so that's going to let a nearby cabinet know that we're supposed to extend some kind of countertop over the top of this. All right. So a few extra little things going on here. And what does all this mean? Well, a couple things. One is that if you're someone that want to show like a can light housing along with your can light, so that in your when you're going into some like 3D framing view, you can actually see the can light housings. You can do that now because the can light can actually cut the ceiling. We can actually have a true recess light where we've got, you know, the lens of that light is tucked way up into the ceiling, for instance. So a lot of new kind of cool capabilities with that particular type of tool. Maybe you're someone that wants to do, you know, have some kind of downpipe integrated with your tub or something like that. And so you can do that where the tub itself is going to cut the floor and show that downpipe coming through. Maybe you even, for some reason, want to, you know, generate automatic diagrams with this and you're incorporating the frame out for the box frame out for your P-trap or something like that. And you could incorporate that into the tub side of that fixture and have it automatically cut the floor. So some pretty cool stuff with that. We now have the ability to target the layer of some object inside of a, say, full height cabinet, for instance. So let's just go double oven. Let's go ahead and place this inside. And then if we open this up, I believe I can select this appliance and edit it. I don't know that we could do this before. I can't remember, but we can change the way that the labels are displayed. I haven't dug into this to know what's different. I think I'd have to have a little side-by-side going on. Yeah, something about the label display of appliances inside of cabinets has changed. We'll try to catch that in a next version. Maybe by the time we do the Chief Experts version, I can target that and figure exactly how that works out. Hex, man, I missed this. This is very exciting for me. Hex color codes. If you didn't know about Power Toys on a Windows machine, if you're on Mac and you're on a Windows machine, go check out Power Toys. Something you may have noticed is that when I drag around these windows, there's some kind of docking happening on my screen. You see this? That means I can expand this to just that little section. I can expand this to just those highlighted sections. This is all part of Power Toys suites, only in Windows side. Sorry, Mac, but I do know that Mac has something similar to this next part, which is a color picker, all right? And so if I hit Windows Shift C, it brings up a color picker where I can pick up any color on my screen. And if I click on it, it even brings up similar colors, other hues, other shades. And then not only that, but it brings up this hex code where I can very quickly copy this hex code to my clipboard and shut this down. What does that mean now in Chief Architect? Well, I should be able to take my adjust material tool. I'm just going to say that I want to blend with some texture and choose a color. And there we go. And someone asked me earlier what suggestions made it through that were my suggestion. That's my suggestion. And so I just get to paste this color code and immediately pick up that blue, which is Chief Architect's own blue. Bam. Chief Architect, I just made you your own company subway tile. You're welcome. Thank you very much for giving us that one. That's just a really big one for me. For those of us that are trying to match some paint color that we don't have in the catalogs, we're trying to match some finish that's on someone's furniture. We're trying to match something that someone took a sample of with one of those, actual physical color matching tools that they placed on a wall. That's just really huge. Those hex codes are just the easiest way to get RGB HSL values into some material. Super, super cool. Someone's asking, would you be loading this video to your YouTube channel? This will always remain in the live section of my YouTube channel. So if you're unfamiliar with that, you should be able to get to, let's just go my YouTube channel right here. And then in the live panel right here is where this is going to show up. So this will be there. Yeah, time to calibrate your monitors. No kidding. Mine are definitely in need. I have one monitor that just doesn't have all the options that the other one does, so that's tricky. Okay, shoe plate generation. I mean, that's kind of a cool one. Let's check this out. Let's see if we can force this to make sense. I'm going to draw some new walls, and we'll probably have an auto generate framing already turned on, or auto roofs, excuse me, already turned on. There we go. And so now I'm going to specify that these two roofs are over framed. So let me open these up in the structure panel, roof over framing, and then I'm going to frame this to my sheathing, press OK. That's going to turn off auto built roofs. And oh, made that disappear for just a quick second, but it's back. And then for this guy, I'm just going to take this and make it cross itself. And there we go. And so then if we go take a look at some kind of framing overview instead, actually what I like to do is I like to take my roof planes in this case, and I'm going to generate framing for these. Build framing for selected objects. Let's go ahead and turn on roof rafters. And then for the case of these particular roof planes, I'm not doing auto rebuild frame, so I can kind of cheat and just delete these, and it should show framing, I would think. Maybe it is auto framing. Select all framing and show it. Oh, interesting. I did delete the framing. Oops. All right, so instead, I'm just going to take these three roof planes. I will build that framing again. Or we'll just build all framing, what have you. And then I'm going to put these to their own layer. So I'll put this on roof planes, new in this case. And we'll just make it so that they don't show up. And so we should theoretically see some kind of shoe plate here. Oops. Really hard to work without my hotkeys or my toolbars. I'm like a lost puppy. Oh, you know what? This is not selectable. These should not be visible. Sorry, Chief. I'm good at finding little glitches. Let's try to rebuild the 3D, see what happens. There we go. All right. Did we not have this before? We didn't have shoe plates before? Maybe I just didn't know that. But yeah, this is building to the sheathing now. Okay, cool. Yeah, Aaron, I did turn off that roof plane layer, and it's interesting. I had to rebuild 3D for it to go away. So just a little trick of the trade, I guess. And then something that, my colleague Dan Bowman does, which I actually really love, is you've got these couple breaks in here already, so I can kind of conform and utilize those breaks. But he'll do something where he'll draw in another roof plane in just this section and then go into the layers and actually turn off the roofing material so that it's just displaying, subfloor underneath that. So that's a really cool way of having like some kind of 3D diagram, which in this case leads us to kind of a next feature, which is we can draw text in 3D. And I'm skipping features, but we'll just talk about it, which is I can target something in this 3D. And I've never tried this on a roof plane before, but it seems to be selecting it. And I have trouble utilizing this tool because I'm not quite experienced with it. But this will show display of text in 3D, and you can still use the little arrow that comes with it to kind of try to target some things, maybe. And it might be a little challenging. I think we get that gizmo. Yeah, we get the gizmo. Targeted that roof. Maybe. And keep in mind, this is a rendered thing, so it's going to have to finish rendering. But there we go. Text in 3D. Cool. All right. Hey, speak of the devil. I was just talking about you, sir. Mr. Bowman, I like the way that you display shoe plate generation over an existing roof, and also specify your structure and surfaces so that you're just showing plywood underneath that shoe plate display. And then you can make a roof in that in case you needed to add the attic ventilation from the existing to the new for those remodel pros. Top and bottom girts. All right, let's see what we got for those of you that are doing that whole post frame thing. I know we needed a little bit of love for those of you that are doing that. Let me just draw on some new walls here. And let's see if we can't specify. And let's do wall types. I didn't say, he said, I have fun with that stuff. Yeah, it really is a showcase of the software. It's very cool. Let's see. I did siding for existing. Let's define this. Oh, this is interesting. I did not notice this. This is a new little check mark here. Layer. So what layer would you like to have? So on the fly, you can change the layer here instead of the layer panel. It looks like you might be able to specify, very interesting, the pony wall layer separate from the upper wall. That's really, really cool. One of the reasons that's really, really cool is for you macro pros out there, that should immediately be like, bing, idea, which is that since we can now set our pony wall in a separate layer from our upper wall, that means we can target stuff such as material takeoffs on an upper wall separate from a lower wall, where we're accessing the same publisher values from that, but we are putting in a condition that it must live on this layer if we're going to, include it in a calc. Talk to me later about that. That's a really cool feature. All right, so we're going to define this. I'm just going to make a copy of it, and I'm going to change this framing for framing layer to be, that's horizontal framing. And so horizontal framing, yeah, this used to all be grayed out before. So now we have girt spacing just like we did before. And so top girt construction, interesting. So we're being able to change the type of framing member that it's using. And then we can change that top girt width versus the bottom girt width. Okay, that's kind of cool. Let's just change that to 1.5 inches, top girt width in general. I'm going to change this to 3.5. Why not? Let me press OK. And then while I have these things, let me frame all these things, and let's get into a little framing overview, which I don't know where any of this stuff exists because I'm such a noob at the default out of the box stuff. Perspective framing overview. There we go. So the only thing that I still think that this needs is at times, certain times of, pole barn setups here might be that you want to have our girts to actually give a head girt and sill girt as well as our vertical girts on either side. And let's just reframe or rebuild 3D maybe, or reframe. Let's build all framing. How about that? It's automatically build framing. Why not? And so that's interesting. I swear I had a window in here. That girt's just running right through the window. Oh, am I on the wrong side of things? Maybe I didn't put a window. Oh, I put a window on the wrong side. There we go. So I would like to have the option of verticals here that are like bookshelf framed. You have to do some tricks to kind of get that to happen. So a couple things there. Renee's kryptonite. What's my kryptonite? Oh, out of the box toolbars. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where anything is. It's very true. Roof and ceiling plane defaults. You know that's going to be a huge one for someone like me. One of the main things I'm going to do with roof and ceiling defaults just right out of the box, if we get back to our plan view here, is let's just get into those default settings, roof and custom ceilings. And so myself, and I am always going to put some kind of solid fill style that's a light gray, where its transparency is set probably 80 or 90%. And so then if we just do a little build roof dialog here, and we get into auto rebuild, etc., then when we have conditions where things overlap just a little bit, so let's just say, for instance, let's get back into this view. Let's just say, for instance, that this, and let me turn off this line over. Line over always slows my machine down. I'm just going to tab into this room and set this up 24 inches in height. And so maybe we'll just set this roof to be a gable. Right? And so it's clear here that this roof is over the top of this other roof. And so if we go back and look at, I'm going to shut some other stuff down here. If we go back and look at this, if you've got your roof defaults set up the way you need them to be, which maybe mine were a little too transparent. Let's go fix that real quick. 90%, let's go 70% so we can really see this. There we go. This is clearly indicating that something is over the top of something else to me when this gets printed. You know, and I'm going to change to, I have like a working roofs only view where this is going to be a lot more obvious. Boy, that's interesting. Do we have different defaults based on, say, plan views? Because that's a much deeper fill, isn't it? Oh, interesting. We have defaults based on view. That's really cool. Okay. That's going to make for some, more finite control in terms of like the plot plan overview, where you might want to have just a solid white fill that's 100% versus, a view like this where we're just trying to understand what plane overlaps another, or like a working view. That's really cool. Another aspect of this is that's going to be impactful for me is that now that we have roof defaults, that also means that we have an object information panel. And with any object information panel, this means that we can do some kind of calculation based on this, so that you might be able to get something like projected overhang right out of the box, or projected area, for room area right out of the box. So you might be able to get some U value stuff out of this, some really cool stuff you can do with this. All right. Framing defaults. Yeah, so like for instance, most of my ceilings in California, they're going to be at an 8-foot plate height. So I could lock that lower plate height if I wanted to, and lock the pitch. They're mostly going to be at like a 4 and 12 pitch when I have a 6 and 12 roof, because they're creating some kind of scissor truss setup or something like that. So that's really cool to be able to just start from a ceiling plane that's always going to make sense for your particular project. Very cool. Framing defaults, we're going to get a lot of additional stuff. Object information is a really cool one. In terms of object information, for someone like me that drives all my annotation from some central location, I can basically overwrite what framing information is giving me, or report what framing information is giving me, but change the way that it's structured so that it's matching the rest of my systems. So it's kind of the same premise as roof and ceiling plane defaults. And then you can also change, as we saw there in just the girts, we can change what type of material it's using based on other object types or some type that you're specifying. So that's a pretty cool one as well. I think I'll do that in another video. We're on page 204, and and we're on an hour and a half. That's pretty good. I did mention this library objects cut hole in platforms. I could probably go find a can light to go make that recess. It's going to be the same process as anything really cutting a hole into a light. So we can actually make something real quick here. Let's just go into working plan view and let's just make kind of a low poly count light real quick. Let's just draw a little, maybe not low poly count. If I were going to do a low poly count light, I would switch this tool to the regular octagon tool and do something like, sure, 12 sides, or maybe it's 16 sides and radius is 2 inches. Yeah, sure. And so that's going to be my light fixture. Okay. And then I can copy paste and drag this little node in. And then that's going to be kind of, that bevel, if you will. And I can copy paste and paste hold again. And so then I would take this, I would subtract that intersection, don't retain the original objects. I still should have an original object there. I can convert this to a 3D solid, right? And so this solid could actually be tall because we're basically creating the cylinder, right? That's going to go up into the ceiling. So maybe it's 3 inches tall, something like that. And then that other object that should have been inside of there, I think this is it. And convert this into just, you can convert it into a face. You could convert it into a solid in this case, but let's just convert it into a face and that's fine. And then from finished floor, let's just pick it up off the floor once. Now, something that's really cool that I haven't really shown you yet is we did see that when I was modeling an extrusion profile, right, a molding, that we were able to kind of pick this up off the floor when we selected it, right, depending on the orientation that it's in. If we're in this upright orientation, now we're able to specify that this is 17 inches off the floor. That part's really cool. Well, I think we can do the same thing with these objects. We can pick these up off the floor. So if I pick this up off the floor, it is showing me reference heights to that floor. Now it's showing me a billion reference heights because it's all those faceted angles. But if I see the common one here, maybe I could figure this number out. I'm not sure. In the meantime, I could just open this thing up and say that it's finished floor bottom is 3 inches. And here's that face, right? Here's that face. And kind of the same thing as I can open this up and say finished floor to bottom is 4 inches. Now that's still selected. Let me just do something kind of funny as I'm going to apply lighting white to it. That's one of Architect's default source materials to apply light to that texture. Now I did it in plan mode, so it's going to apply it to that solid as well. I wanted to just do it in component mode. And so I should just be able to do that, right? Now, something you want to check before you create a symbol is you want to check what way the surface normals are facing. This makes sense every once in a while. So I'm not going to do that. This is getting a little advanced. I'll show you that when I create a symbol out of this, which we're going to do. So next thing I'm going to do is just choose some white material. There we go. And we'll spray this. And so now I have my can light. This is what I want it to look like. Sure. The lens itself is 1 inch in. Okay, so it's 1 inch up the body. I get to select both of these in my edit toolbar, convert selected to symbol, make it an electrical symbol. Let's show advanced options, add it to library. And then in its options, well, first of all, we want to specify it as a light. Okay. And then in the 3D panel, before when you specified something as a light, it automatically produced some kind of Z position offset. Well, you don't need to do that anymore. And once I specify that this is ceiling mounted, it switches the orientation. But it still did not change the Z position offset, which is very nice. Where the offset is happening now is if we want this to cut floor ceiling, this is where we're going to take the cut depth and change this. And in this case, I'm just going to do entire assembly. We're going to have to modify this cut. All right. And then the insert depth ends up being, what do we have here? We have a 3 inch height, overall height. So in the options panel, I actually want to change this insert depth to be maybe 2.75 inches. Okay. And let me press OK. Now, when I place this on a ceiling and it's ceiling mounted, it should cut that ceiling surface. And look at that. It's inserted it into the ceiling, and it does, in fact, look recessed. Now, the one aspect of this that's a little bit off is that it's cutting to the extent of the symbol, but because the symbol is a cylinder, you're going to have to modify that cut. So when we have this selected, this tool used to only exist in objects that cut a wall assembly. Now it exists for floor or ceiling assemblies as well. And in my case, I'm just going to fillet all the corners. So I'm going to set my fillet radius to be roughly 1.25 inches, maybe, which should be good enough for this 4-inch symbol, and fillet all corners. And oh, it's not quite. So let me go back. Should be able to go back, select this again, select that cut, and then let's choose this. Let's go 1.75 instead. And now we're going to want to resave this back to the library, especially if we change how far recessed this is inside of there. So you can see as we're moving around, it kind of rebuilt 3D, and then should be able to select this and make sure that it's on. And one more thing you might not have known about in X17, adjust brightness. We get to adjust the brightness of individual symbols. In fact, it even gets better than that. And I'll show you it just in a second here. Let's get back to the top-down view where we can see the symbol is placed in the ceiling here. And let's just do a little bit of multiple copy action. So we'll do multiple copy. We'll set this at 48 inches. Sure, why not? And we'll drop a bunch of these in. Now, on top of that, I'm going to place a little switch, and I'm going to place another little switch, and I'm going to show you 2 other features here. I can select both of these switches, and now in our edit toolbar is let's make a ganged electrical box, and we're going to bring this together, and we're even going to show you a representation of a wall plate. How cool is that? So once we've got this wall plate there, I could extend the electrical connection tool and just one thing about this tool is I do believe that it has a continuous draw mode. So if we right click this tool, no, it does not. You have to actually go into the electrical connections tool as the active tool and then right click, and now you can do multiple connections until you left and right click. What's really, really cool about this, once I get back into our view, and let's maybe turn off the emissivity of the ceiling, which we can do by selecting it and clicking on off. That'll turn off my lights up there, which is just wild that we have that feature now. And also, while we're here, we could, in fact, move this so that or span this so that my cofer isn't quite so crazy, right? Excuse me, my troffer. My troffer isn't quite so crazy. And move this, look at that. And it's so wild. Such a wild experience, Chief. Thank you. When I select this light here, I do believe that I can dim from this light. Well, I thought I could. Let's ungang them real quick. Maybe that's just a feature for unganged. Yes, when it's unganged, you can change the dim and brightness of the lights that are connected to it. So if I switch this to a physically based mode, or maybe if we have it ganged but I tab into it, let's try that real quick. I'm going to have these ganged again. And I'm going to select and tab. There we go. Select and tab gets me to that switch, and I can adjust the brightness on those. Let's make sure we got no windows in here so we can really see these lights turn on. All right, so I want you to notice something. Those lights aren't actually illuminating the scene. And in case you didn't know, the reason for that, I'm going to have to edit all these symbols real quick. The reason for that is that the surface normals are incorrect. When I was drawing it with a solid, the surface normals are facing the wrong way. So this face is technically facing up. Before I grouped it together, I could have basically flipped that face to the other side. But you can still do this in our 3D panel and go invert surface direction. That's going to make it so those lights are now facing down. And they should be lighting the room now. They are. So there we go. They're lighting the room. Let's get this right up against the wall so we can see their effect. And the electrical connection tool is going to go a little haywire, but that's okay. So there we are. We're lighting the room with those 4 lights. Let's just say, for instance, I'm going to copy paste and paste a little light right here. This light right here is not connected to those other lights. All right. Let's just let this rendering technique finish itself off. We'll just set this to something real low. Now, when I go and select this ganged box, tab into it, and change this brightness, I can change this down to something like 50%. And we're dimming all those lights that are connected to that switch, which is very, very cool for kind of setting up your scene. So once this finishes, yeah, we can see that this light's going to be a little bit brighter than those other lights. Hard to see right now. I don't have enough lights in this scene. Hopefully that all made sense. Might have to do just a tutorial video on that for everybody. All right, I think I'm going to go through a few other features, and then we're probably going to have to do a part 2 because this is a long live show. It's hard to keep everybody in here. We're losing some comments, so comment if you got some questions. Ramp slope. So you can input the slope and lock the ramp top and bottom height. This is particularly useful if you're trying to do an extrusion along a path. Or you're just trying to build a ramp of a particular slope would also be another great use case for this. Another thing that it shows later on in other features is a lot of times people want to see this is if I just build another floor and I want to show this staircase on both floors without having to do that whole open below trick, right? Then I do believe that we can open this staircase up and we have some new plan display panel. And we can show, hey, display on floor above. We can actually show always. And we can even change the way that the floor above display shows, where it's showing the lower half as nothing versus an outline. And so let me just press OK and show you what this looks like when I go up a floor. Look at that. So not even needing an open below room definition here to show that there is, in fact, a stairway here going downstairs. So that's a big one. It's been requested a long time. That's particularly useful when you're doing some kind of exterior thing and you want to show it on multiple floors to indicate that we've got a floor coming up from grade to a deck, and we've got a floor, a staircase going down from a from a deck down to grade. This is an older question. Do you think one day we'll cut to the shape of the symbol? I don't think so. And Richard, I know exactly why you in particular are asking for that. I am going to suggest that they give us some kind of union capabilities or something like that, where we can union some other shape to conform our cut hole shape. And that's for some of the really tricky, cool architectural features he does in his designs. And yes, that staircase deal is very huge. I mean, that makes a lot of things easier. A lot of times when we're creating an open below scenario, it's affecting our rooms in a way that create a bunch of joinery issues and platform intersection issues that are undesirable issues, just so we can show that staircase display. So this solves a lot of those issues. Oh, and we have so many more. Here's another one that I suggested, anisotropic materials. We're going to get much more realistic looking stainless steel with anisotropy. So I'd say kind of leave that to the content development team if you're not knowing exactly what you're doing with that. They're going to do a really good job of giving us new stainless steel materials that are going to look really, really, really good, not only in your standard rendering technique, but also in your ray trace rendering technique options as well. So That's a big one for me. I've been asking for that for a couple of versions now. And let's throw some windows in here, and let's see if they have a pre-done material for that. Or maybe we've got an appliance here. We might be able to just utilize that appliance. So let's edit this little guy right here. And so in our properties panel, they're calling it brushed, but that's what, anisotropy is going to represent. And you can load in an anisotropy mask if you'd like to. And as I move this slider up and we see the preview, it's just going to change the way, this is going to be a layman's term kind of explanation going towards this, but it's changing how the bounce kind of spreads and disperses across the material itself in kind of a micro way. So not only that, but we can kind of rotate the way that this is, creating that bounce. So you can make things that look like an old school volume knob from like one of your old Yamaha receivers, right? You can kind of get that look, or you can load in a map. And I'm going to have some anisotropy maps that I have in my library, but if I get into my metals, we're going to see, just this in particular might be able to do some funky little movement things into that mask, right? So that when we press OK, we throw a little light overhead, this will start looking a lot more realistic. I have to build some out before I can start showcasing this, but yeah, we're going to start seeing way more realistic looking appliances in our kitchens, for instance. And so that's a big one. And I think that's all I'm going to go over for now. We kind of started with project management, and we've got a lot more to touch on. And I'd say just keep a lookout. We're going to, go over this also with the Chief Experts group. We're going to take more of, a beginner approach to reviewing a lot of these items. And we're probably going to just pick some items that we really want to show you how to use. And we'll do it, from just a real basis, slow approach to taking a look at some of these new features and how you might want to use them. But there's some really cool things here. Any last comments before I check out? Cool. I am starting to sell some of my products. You'll be seeing some of the updated products. I sell my full library for X17s out there already. I have a preliminary pro plan that works on X17. It has a few things that will be updated specifically for X17, adding some new features. It also currently works in X16 as well, because I built it in X16 on purpose so that people can kind of check out the newest features that I have. And I'll showcase that in a live show at some other point. But really just wanted to dive in on this and show you some of the cool features coming up and get you excited about this. We really like it when the community starts using this during the public beta phase, because it helps us get the development team answers that they need to make this a polished product and give us something to be excited about. So I'm already very excited about a couple of these features. Can't wait to show you more videos about it. Cool. See you next time.